What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. No fakesies this time. Jarome Iginla has been traded. This video is going to talk about the actual trade that happened, the fake Boston trade that didn't happen, but I reported on my page anyway, so I have to admit being incorrect in that, and my analysis of the trade for both the Calgary Flames as well as the Pittsburgh Penguins. So news broke last night in a press conference after the Calgary Flames had finished their game with, I believe, the Colorado Avalanche. The actual deal that went down was Jarome Iginla being traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, in exchange, the Pittsburgh Penguins sent back forward Kenny Agostino, who is a 20-year-old unsigned college player, forward Ben Hanowski, who is a 22-year-old unsigned college player, and a 2013 first-round draft pick, which is non-conditional. It's just the first-round draft pick up front. Now, I have to admit, last night around, I said it was about 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, news broke and was reported by a couple of sources at TSN, as well as some sources in the States, that Jarome Iginla had in fact been traded to the Boston Bruins. Now, the deal that was apparently in place for him to go to Boston was Iginla going to Boston in exchange for forward Alexander Koklachev, who's a 19-year-old player in the Ontario Hockey League, defensive prospect Matt Bartkowski, who's a 24-year-old player playing in the AHL, who, in my opinion, is NHL ready, does have a couple of NHL games under his belt, as well as a conditional 2013 first-round draft pick, that pick being conditional on Iginla re-signing in Boston. Now, I made a video last night because I wanted to be first. I wanted to be right on top of this situation, so I made a quick video last night. I think only about 50 people saw it or so, that I reported that Iginla had been traded to Boston. And that was based on reports from TSN's Aaron Ward, as well as, like I said, a couple of other people from news sources down in the States had reported that this deal was done. I was officially the very first person on YouTube to report the Iginla trade to Boston. And as such, like I said, the video got about 50 views in a very short amount of time. We're talking a span of like 20 minutes, because this was like literally breaking news. So I have to admit that I was incorrect in doing that. I went with the sources. They seemed like good sources, and in general they are very good sources. But when it comes to sports journalism, and really journalism in general, stuff like that can change. People make mistakes. I apologize for taking that source that was not confirmed and reporting it to you guys. That was my fault, and I apologize for that. Aaron Ward, as well as the other people who reported the story of Iginla being traded to Boston, have also issued apologies. And, you know, journalism's like that sometimes, and life goes on. So the Iginla trade to Boston did not happen. I don't think Calgary got the best deal for Iginla, and there was so much worry that whoever was going to trade for Iginla was going to overpay. I honestly think Calgary even might have got a little undersold in the deal that they ended up taking. Now, everything else I say in this video, I want to preface by saying I firmly believe Jarome Iginla's best days as a hockey player are behind him. He's not going to be a 50-goal scoring or 40-goal scoring, 90-point per season player anymore. That's not the kind of player that you're going to get from Jarome Iginla. That being said, I still think Iginla has 4 to 5 years where he can really produce. You know what I mean? I honestly think he can still produce at a relatively high level. So we're still talking, he could still give you 55 to 60 points a year. And to be perfectly honest, that's not bad from a second-line player, from a top six forward. If you can get 50 to 60 points from him, not bad at all. And especially on a team like Pittsburgh, where you've got so many guys that can put the puck in the net, it's going to be points by osmosis. And Iginla could very well have a bit of a career renaissance, however long he happens to stay in Pittsburgh. But let's take a look at this deal. Let's start by taking a look at the deal from Calgary's perspective. What does Calgary get in this deal? In this deal with Pittsburgh, arguably the draft pick is going to be better. And the reason that I say that is Calgary receives a non-conditional first-round draft pick. So they're getting this draft pick no matter what. When you look at the Boston deal again, the deal with Boston was going to be a first-round draft pick conditional on Jarome Iginla re-signing in Boston. Again, he's a free agent at the end of this season. So you were only going to get that pick if Iginla re-signed in Boston. Whereas in this deal with Pittsburgh, you're getting this first-round pick. You've got it. So in that regard, this deal was better than the Boston deal. However, when you look at the two players that are coming back to Calgary in exchange for sending Iginla to Pittsburgh, you've got two players who are unsigned. They're under no obligation whatsoever, considering they've gone the U.S. college route. They're under no obligation whatsoever to sign in Calgary. They really aren't. And really, it's two players, neither of whom, in my opinion anyway, play hockey at a high level. Now, yeah, Agostino plays Div 1 in the NCAA, and nothing against Div 1 athletics in the NCAA. They're sure as hell a hell of a lot more athletic than I am. But Hanowski plays Div 2, and to be perfectly honest, I don't think there's any comparison between getting a Div 1 player and a Div 2 player on one side and getting an OHL player and an AHL, NHL-ready player on the other deal. So in this respect, the deal with Boston was, I believe, going to be sending a lot better back to Calgary in terms of the players that's going to be coming back. I've watched a couple of games of Alexander Koklachev's. He's a damn good player. I haven't seen anything of Matt Bartkowski, but apparently he's one of Pittsburgh's better defensive prospects, and he's a guy that is NHL ready right now. So, when I look at it, overall, I consider the deal with Boston to be a better deal. But at the same time, in this whole situation, it was Iginla who was going to dictate where he was going to go play. So really, it's kind of a moot point. It doesn't really mean much. It was Iginla wanted to go play in Pittsburgh, and this was Pittsburgh's offer, so this is what they got back. So it makes sense in that regard, but honestly, I just think the deal with Boston was going to be a better deal. Now, of course, two sides to every coin here, so let's take a look at what Pittsburgh is getting back in this deal. Pittsburgh, in trading for Jarome Iginla, is getting veteran leadership on a team that should, I think, still be considered relatively rich in young talent, both at the pro level as well as the developmental levels below them. I think you could still probably consider Pittsburgh to be relatively rich in young talent. So that's great, adding veteran leadership to a team like that. But in combination with the deals for Brendan Morrow and Douglas Murray, this is a team that got older. And in a long stretch of a playoff run, I don't necessarily know whether that was the best thing to do, whether it was a good thing to trade for these mid-30 players. Probably not going to be making the optional skates, we'll put it that way. However, I think when you look at a team where all they had to give up was 4 draft picks and 3 prospects, 2 of which are unsigned college players that are really question marks as to whether or not they'd actually stay with your franchise. When all you have to give up is 4 draft picks and 3 players, and you get back Jarome Iginla, Brendan Morrow, and Douglas Murray, it's probably a good series of deals. So clearly Pittsburgh wants to win the Cup this year. They're loading up to try to do that, even if Iginla decides not to stay in Pittsburgh, which honestly, there's only so much puck to go around in Pittsburgh, so chances are I don't think Iginla will stay with them. Like, he'll try to win his Cup this year, and then he'll go sign somewhere else with a franchise that's willing to throw a ton of money at him. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to be that franchise. I don't think anyone should be under the delusion that Iginla is going to stay with Pittsburgh. And I mean, come on. They're getting a guy that was a captain of a Canadian franchise for many, many years, one of the most beloved captains in the NHL, a guy with a ton of leadership ability, guy that's won 2 Olympic gold medals. So that's really it. In general, I think it was a good deal for Pittsburgh. Calgary, I think, undersold Iginla a little bit, even considering that Iginla was in a contract year and it was going to be probably his last year in Calgary one way or the other. I still think Calgary could have gotten a little bit better out of the deal. At the same time, good deal for Pittsburgh, relatively good deal for Calgary getting that unconditional first round pick. Even if those 2 college players never sign with them, they're still going to get a franchise caliber player for the future, so really can't be all bad for Calgary. They're really not going anywhere right now anyway, so probably a good deal for both sides. I just think Calgary probably could have gotten a little bit more. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and I'll see you next time.